All right, welcome back, everyone. So this is kind of a tie into my last video that I put out, but let me turn this down just a little bit for you. Turn down the gain a little bit. Actually, turn down just a little bit more. I think it's a little loud. Okay, there we go. I would just say that I think a lot of us are caught up in all the minutia of everything going on in the world, right? It's not that we shouldn't be. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot that affects us with the sort of decisions that are being made right now. And for that reason, it's not unreasonable to be following things. But I also feel like we spend so much of our times, our idle time, doing idle things. Not focusing on self-improvement, anything that feels like work, because we give so much of ourselves to our jobs that, the standard, the way it would be 20 years ago for working hard, is much different. And we don't live currently in a job economy right now that values workers, it values employers. So the reason why I say that is I think it's important that we talk about the fact that we're not crazy for what we're saying. To be an awakened person, someone that's, woke, seeing the injustices of this world, as I discussed, it's kind of like watching NASCAR or watching boxing. We're waiting for something bad to happen, or we watch the bad things happen and we're like, whoa, that happened. And the reality is we do not need to spend as much of our time during the day focused on the stuff that we do not have control over, that's outside of our control. And there's wisdom in knowing that, right? If we're in a position to be able to do something about it, great. And the same thing's true when we worry and when we have fear. We recognize we have to stay abreast to the current things in the world. It's important to stay current with things. But in doing so, it may not be helpful at all to us if we're in no position to be able to do anything. Number one. Number two, as I've been saying for a long time, and I kind of came up with this myself, and I've seen other people speak about it, because I used to not be really on social media that much, 8-9 years back when I was going through my chronic health issues and dealing with crisis in my own life. I just spent a lot of time alone in the room alone. There's not so much this room, but the room behind me alone. There's actually a closet, but beyond that, in the parlor in the living room. And I could spend a lot of time not even on my computer, because I had a tech job, and I wasn't tempted to be on my computer when I was not at work, because I spent so much time on my computer when I was at work. So sometimes I felt listless, sometimes I felt alone, but I was able to connect with Source. And so anyways, where I'm just trying to get at is, what I realized is I may not have control over what happens to me, but I do have control over the way I react to it. And if there's not any new information about said situation, you don't necessarily need to perpetually worry by using your imagination. And through the law of manifestation and attraction, we know that if we invite the wrong vibrational things in, we're more likely to attract it. It's kind of scary. It's kind of the reason why it's even written in the Bible that what we say matters. If we really feel like we've been condemned or forsaken, we're more likely to see that outcome, versus if we're going to realize that universe, God, source, higher power, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it God, Jesus. You can call it Buddha, whatever you want to call it. Or cosmos or source. I think source is a safe one that, everyone can relate to. Because really, that's the whole thing, is we're all one consciousness on this large living organism, right? Like, we don't know how consciousness comes about, truly, how two disparate things come together to form one thing and form consciousness. That's the part that has always confused me. I don't even think anyone's able to answer it to this day. We call it the moment of conception, right? And we know that what religious texts have to say, about us being created by an intelligent source. And there's a lot of intelligence in this world just built into nature and our interactions with nature and just the whole circle of life, even us just breathing out CO2, plants taking in the CO2, putting out oxygen, and carbohydrates, or in addition, through our urine, that we produce ammonia, which goes into the soil, which then fertilizes the plant. So, these things seem a little too perfect, in a recycling manner. So anyways, all I'm basically just trying to say is it's best that you try to not worry about it so much. Focus on what you have control over versus what you don't have control over. Be careful of the narrative that you speak about yourself, especially if the narrative didn't come from you, if it came from someone else. You understand there are a lot of hurt people in this world, and hurt people for the most part. It's not always universally true. But there are a lot of people that lead with ego that, yes, absolutely. And they come against someone that's genuine. They don't know what to do. All we're asking for in those people is accountability. It's real simple. They just have to be accountable. They're so damn afraid. They're broken children. They haven't sought maturity through adulthood. They haven't understood how to self-heal, self-soothe, or any of that crap. And that's the whole thing is to be forged in the darkness, for a chosen one to be forged in the darkness sometimes feels like a punishment, but really what it's there for is for us to be able to meet people at their levels of their suffering. Even if it's uncomfortable for us, we recognize it all the more. So many aspects and elements of our society chooses to ignore people that are suffering. We want to tell a story about why they are on the side of the street or why they have gotten into the bad situation they're in, a bad relationship, potentially an addiction, who knows. But you're basically trying to summate your observations using society's explanations for those things, which is not universal. It's not truth. And for a lot of us, we won't even ask that person or have a conversation. We'll choose to judge at a distance. And I think we need to be careful about that. I've got firm belief about judging people, which I know goes back to texts, but don't judge people. If they've done you wrong, you see a pattern emerging, I think you have the right to judge them. But even then, try to lead from forgiveness to not perpetuate the cycle. Ego, it doesn't solve anything. This world needs healing right now all the more. And it doesn't feel good if you're a chosen one that has been forged in the darkness and hurt, that somehow we have to be the grown-up ones in this space. It's somehow our responsibility to do all the work. But we also don't realize the calling on our life. It's God's put us here, why we're still breathing, why we're still here. There's clearly a reason why we're still here. And we can spend our entire lives fighting that thing. And then, get into really old times where we're really old and not realize that. So one other thing I want to mention just right quick is that it's really important that you trust the process. And what do I mean by trusting the process? Source, God, cosmos, whatever you want to call him, it, her, is not asking for your understanding, asking for your trust. The other component about this too is it's really important to be able to take action on things, because since we have free will, it's required of us. So you're not supposed to necessarily know how things are going to work out. But what's most important is that you show up and you do your part to act on all that stuff, on the things that matter most to you. Or on just taking the next step forward if you're not sure what that next thing is. I know it's been confusing in my own life, realizing that Doing nothing expecting a result is a self-fulfilling prophecy due to free will. You know, I know as humans, we often want to feel like we want to have things handed to us, as that sign, but there's only so much that can be done if we isolate ourselves, if we don't put in the time necessary and the effort necessary to achieve it. So be well. Till next time. Peace and love to you all.